President Trump says we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask. Will he wait to be invited, or is the National Guard headed to Illinois? 617-266-6868 is the number here. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. For those of you who are not listening earlier in the week, just to let you know where Mr. Kuhner is, we had expected him back on the air at this point in time after he took a vacation at last week in August. He and his son went to Croatia, the motherland, to visit relatives and to show Ashton the country of Jeff's roots. And there was a little bit of a bus accident while he was there, and Jeff was banged up quite a bit, and he didn't, I don't think, realize how badly until he got back to the United States, sought some medical attention, and realized that he had indeed fractured some ribs. So it is difficult for him to speak. He is on pain medications. He is healing, and he's getting better lickety-split, and we'll be back with you before you know it, but that's where he is. Never fear. He's mending very well, and he knows that everybody misses him and wishes him well, and he expects to see everybody on Monday. But until then, you have me, and we're talking today about President Trump versus Chicago. President Trump ran on a platform of Make America Great Again, and that included making America's streets safe again. And he showed what he could do in D.C. Mayor Bowser at first put up this big fight. Then when she realized that the president was not just paying lip service, but could deliver on his promise to clean up the streets of D.C. and make it safe again, she pulled a 180 and told the National Guard this week that they could stay indefinitely because she was so appreciative of the job they had done. And now the National Guard troops in D.C., specifically the District of Columbia National Guard troops, have had their orders extended through December. And the main purpose, obviously, of the extension is to ensure that Guard members who are helping on the streets get the benefits and so forth that they deserve. But it's a strong indication that they don't intend to wind down the Guard anytime soon in D.C., and that's with the mayor's blessing. That's a turnaround, don't you think? The president says that D.C. is now a safe zone, and he is willing to help other cities. Cut 61A, please, Mike.
Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. You're not reporting any crime because there is none. They said crime is down 87%, and I said, no, it's not. It's down 100%. We have a great thing going. I could do that with Chicago. We could do that with New York. We could do it with Los Angeles. So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago, or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad.
So everything's doing well in D.C. Other people want him to come, but Chicago, not so fast. They're not really asking for President Trump's help. And he says that's all they have to do to clean up the streets. Cut 61, please, Mike.
So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks. Easier than D.C. But we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us.
All they have to do is ask. Now, the president says this is not a political thing, but it is an obligation. And he made the promise to the American people that this was one of the things he's going to work on. Do you believe him? Do you believe, is this a political attack on blue cities, or does he really view this as an obligation to the American people to make our streets safe again, no matter where they are? The proof is in the pudding, I think, isn't it? With crime stats down big time. According to the White House, as of last Friday, before the holiday weekend, There had been close to 1,400 total arrests since the federal crackdown started. And city officials and critics of the program in D.C. before are saying, yeah, crime is declining. And with numbers like that, why isn't everybody on board? Why isn't Chicago, basically chomping at the bit to have President Trump's help to make their city safe again, to make their citizens, to make their residents safe again? I think Democrats in particular don't understand why people care about crime. And I think that's because they've become a party of elitists. A majority of them don't deal with crime, not unless they lived in downtown D.C. And those people understand what President Trump has done and are behind him at this point. But why would Democrats be so upset about crime? Why would they deny it? Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland was on TV the other day, and he basically shrugged his shoulders and said, what is the big deal about crime? Cut number 8, please, Mike.
You told my colleague Pamela Brown yesterday that you thought this military invasion, as you called it, is backfiring on Trump. How so? Because he certainly does not think it is backfiring. He clearly thinks it's working for him.
Well, it cuts against the deepest principles of the country. I mean, we were founded in opposition to a standing army, with a fear of a standing army, and the military is not supposed to be used for ordinary law enforcement purposes. In D.C., he was talking about cleaning up the graffiti and, dealing with the blight of homelessness, which are obviously local, not federal issues. And he's trying to militarize our society, intimidate his political opponents. The whole idea of picking cities based on their partisan leadership is absurd. I mean, there are lots of Republican cities and towns struggling with crime. Everybody is across the country. Always. Crime has always been part of our history.
So crime is part of our history. Is he saying, we can't avoid crime? Why this big kerfuffle about crime? I find that a really bizarre attitude. I mean, just like, there was this MSNBC analyst. She was very snarky. Her name is Ashley Parker, and she's an analyst, and she's also a staff writer for The Atlantic. And she tried to sell the same narrative as Jamie Raskin, that fighting crime is unnecessary. And she put out this really bizarre tweet or posting on X. She said, the sudden appearance of the National Guard in D.C. brings with it an absurdist sheen. Their tasks, their backdrops farcical, their very presence sitcom-esque, and she's saying that their backdrop is Krispy Kreme. She's referencing Veep. She's being really snotty. Here's the funny thing about this. So she's saying we don't need help in D.C. A few months ago, she put up, before President Trump wanted to fight crime, she put up this very different posting that, once you put a posting up, even if you take it down, it exists somewhere and you can retrieve it. Well, somebody found an old tweet in which she wrote, this is it. After another bike was stolen last night, my husband and I realized our life as D.C. homeowners by the numbers included 1 stolen car, 2 stolen scooters, 3 stolen bikes, and a partridge in a pear tree, etc. Wow. So before President Trump wanted to fight crime, she recognized crime. Since he wanted to fight crime and has been successful at it, it's not a problem for anybody. I mean, she got roasted on X for this hypocrisy. Some of the examples. Can you believe Ashley Parker is a college graduate? How incredibly clueless can one be? Here's another one. The face of stupid. The problem is you won't learn a damn thing by this. Called out for being a hypocritical nitwit. Tomorrow you'll be no better. Washington Post, one propaganda fest after another. Here's any more bikes or cars stolen, you dolt. I mean, they really went after her, and I think rightly so for the whole thing. For being such a jackass. But that is their attitude, and it's one thing to have Ashley Parker refusing to recognize crime because, and there's a direct link there, you can see it, President Trump was successful at combating it. But it's another thing to have the mayor of Chicago give that kind of response, because it's so political. What they accuse President Trump of, and this is normal behavior for Democrats, what they accuse President Trump of is what they themselves are guilty of. You have Mayor Brandon Johnson. Response to the crime rate in Chicago is to ignore the question. It doesn't exist. This was him on with, of all people, Joe Scarborough. Even when asked by Joe Scarborough, not a really big supporter of President Trump, Scarborough is asking Mayor Johnson, well, what are you going to do about crime? Because, it's pretty bad. Why don't you invite President Trump in? And Mayor Johnson's response is to not answer the question. I don't have time to play you the cut before the break. We'll play it on the other side. But this is their attitude. We're responsible for it, so therefore we have to ignore it. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. The text number is 70470 if you want to join in on that. 617 says, you told us how Jeff is doing. I hope he gets better soon, but how is his son? Is he okay? Yeah, Ashton's fine. It wasn't so much as a bus accident that Jeff was in as an accident on a bus. The bus stopped short. Jeff apparently fell and cracked his ribs. Ashton is fine. Ashton is just exhausted, according to his mother, because this happened at the end of their trip, and then he had to help his dad, who was a little bit the worse for wear there coming home. But Ashton is perfectly fine, and Jeff is getting better quickly. So we're talking about how President Trump says all a city has to do is ask, and he will help with crime, like he did with D.C. But Democratic cities, blue cities, are not exactly racing to accept that invitation. In fact, the majority of them won't even admit that there is a crime problem, let alone that they caused it by, for instance, defunding police, which is, to name, one disastrous progressive policy. And the perfect example of this is Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, who won't even admit to fellow Democrat water carrier Joe Scarborough that could be an answer, that fighting crime is an issue and that they may need more police. Cut number 11, please, Mike.
Do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. Look,
okay,
I'm not
that's
saying
not,
that
that's
we
not
don't.
The question I asked. My question is, and I just need a yes or a no, do you believe the streets of Chicago would be safer if you got all of those other extraordinary programs put back into place, which do have a history of being successful, if that's complemented by having 5,000 more cops on the streets of Chicago?
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers, Joe, is what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you that all of these other social programs are extraordinarily important. I just need a yes or a no.
But you're not going to get one, because he doesn't want to answer the question, because he's responsible for fewer police being on the streets of Chicago. He's responsible for putting money, taxpayer money, into illegal immigration issues, into supporting illegal aliens in Chicago, as opposed to hiring more police. That's right at his doorstep. So no, he's not going to admit it. He also specifically told the president during a press conference to not cut down on crime. I can't make this up. Cut 23, please.
We have not called for this. Our people have not asked for this. But nevertheless, we find ourselves having to respond to this. And we find ourselves in a position where we must take immediate, drastic action to protect our people from federal overreach. Protecting Chicago will ensure that every Chicagoan knows their rights, that every single family is prepared, and every part of city government is directed to protect the people of Chicago from federal action.
Don't come. We don't want you here. we don't have no stinking crime. We don't need you to come. And then he went on the weeknight on MSNBC and called President Trump reprehensible and trampling the Constitution for wanting to come in and help them with crime the way he helped D.C. Cut 53, please, Mike.
This president is trampling on our Constitution. He's behaving in a way that is undermining our democracy, and he's trying to get us to submit our humanity to his will. That's not what we're going to do in the city of Chicago. We're going to stand up for working people, make the necessary investments, hold the people accountable who are causing harm. But we need this president to actually show up with real investments. If he were serious, why did he cut 30% of the budget of ATF? 1,465 Americans who have been serving in these capacities got cut from his budget. For what? To militarize ICE, his own private security entity that causes harm and terror against communities. This president is reprehensible, his behavior at this moment. And that's why we're standing firm in the city of Chicago to protect people, to stand up for people, and then to invest in people.
They're standing up for the people of Chicago by letting them be overrun with crime. Yet he says it's President Trump that's trampling on the Constitution. I think it's crazy. Doesn't it sound crazy to you? And it's bad enough that that's the mayor of Chicago, but the governor of Illinois is not to be outdone by Mayor Johnson. He called sending in the Guard to aid law enforcement an invasion of U.S. troops. Cut 24, please.
Have you been briefed by anyone in the administration about these plans?
No one in the administration, the president or anybody under him, has called anyone in my administration and me, have not called the city of Chicago or anyone else. So it's clear that in secret they're planning this, well, it's an invasion with U.S. troops if they in fact do that. The other thing is, they ought to be coordinating with local law enforcement. They ought to let us know when they're coming, where they're coming, if it's ICE or if it's ATF or whoever it is. But they don't want to do that either. And I must say it's disruptive. It's dangerous. It tends to inflame passions on the ground when they don't let us know what their plans are and when we can't coordinate with them.
Well, you don't want to coordinate with them. You told them to stay out. So how can you say they won't coordinate with us when they stay out? One, and two, in secret? I'm pretty sure I just saw President Trump standing in the Oval Office saying, ask us in. We're happy to come. We'll help you out. Here we are. We got people ready to go. Here we are. What, want us in? Does that sound like it's in secret to you? He just defies explanation. And he even threatened to prosecute National Guard who came in to help with law enforcement. And he's saying that he wants to coordinate with the White House. Cut number 13, please, Mike.
If you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law. As Dr. King once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Humbly, I would add, it doesn't bend on its own. History tells us we often have to apply force needed to make sure that the arc gets where it needs to go. This is one of those times.
The arc gets... You know who else used to talk about an arc? That was Joe Biden. Remember Joe Biden talking about the arc of history? It's ragtime. It means nothing. The one thing that comes out of that cut is the fact that he's threatening prosecution of National Guard members who assist in law enforcement. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. The mayor of Chicago and his compatriot, the governor of Illinois, are, I have no other word for it, but hysterical. How dare President Trump support Chicago, or how dare he suggest that Chicago is riddled with crime? How dare he want to send help to fight the crime that doesn't exist in our streets? How dare you have secret plans, by the way, that were announced in the Oval Office to come help? We need to coordinate, but we'll arrest you if you come, if you tell us that you're coming. I mean, my head is spinning from these people. And they got the teachers union over Labor Day weekend to help out by protesting. They had that anti-Trump workers over billionaires marches that were led by teachers union, and they had one in Chicago over Labor Day. And the organizers were saying thousands of people are going to be in attendance. If you look at pictures of it, it doesn't really look like that. It looks to me like there were, maybe dozens to hundreds, maybe. But the protesters said they were concerned by Trump's threat to send out the National Guard and additional ICE agents. That we can't have a major crackdown. Shut down ICE, no military occupation, resist fascism, were what the sign said. And Mayor Brandon is claiming that if Trump sent them, neighbors would rise up against tyranny. You know who these people remind me of? Do you remember the protesters at NYU, the Columbia students who went down not knowing what they were protesting? That's what these people remind me of. They have no idea what it is that they're protesting about. And they don't seem to really worry Trump. He basically declared in the Oval Office, we're going in. Cut 50, please, Mike.
Your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe. Everyone likes you anyway. They probably wouldn't do it. But it's so dangerous. And there are people in this audience that you've suffered greatly. There are people in this audience that have been mugged and hurt badly, and they don't want to talk about it. Maybe you were very brave in talking about it. You made quite an impression on a lot of people. I appreciate it.
He's talking to one of the reporters that talked about how they'd been mugged recently. And so President Trump is basically warning Chicago, get your act together. I'm here. We can come help. The president posted over the weekend on True Social. He said, 7 people were killed, 24 people were shot in Chicago last weekend. And J.B. Pritzker, the weak and pathetic governor of Illinois, just said he doesn't need help in preventing crime. He is crazy. He better straighten it out fast or we're coming. And that follows weeks of escalating tension between the White House and Chicago over crime and immigration enforcement. This is, and they're between a rock and a hard place. If they accept help, it means they have to admit that there's a problem, and they won't do that. Governor Pritzker keeps pushing back against President Trump, accusing them of, authoritarian overreach. And it got to the point where on last Saturday, Mayor Johnson signed an executive order directing city agencies, are you ready for this? To resist federal immigration raids, barring Chicago police from cooperating with federal authorities on civil immigration enforcement. And they also prohibited officers from assisting in patrols, checkpoints, traffic stops, anything tied to federal operations. Johnson says the measure was needed to protect residents' constitutional rights amidst the possibility of imminent militarized immigration or National Guard deployment. And he claimed that President Trump was yet again behaving outside the bounds of the Constitution. Meanwhile, I don't know if this was a trolling thing or whether they, really meant to poke them a little bit more, or whether they really need it. Trump officials have advanced their plans to use Chicago's Great Lakes Naval Station to support any upcoming immigration enforcement sweeps, which of course sent Pritzker and Johnson into a complete and utter tizzy, including, by the way, you know who weighed in on this? Former Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. I mean, seriously, the guy who took, parental leave, went missing during a transportation crisis during COVID, came out and on X said, our military was not set up to cater to the whims of a would-be American dictator, while immigrant rights activists, are on the streets protesting. And they're charging Trump with waging war on American cities. Yet, President Trump says Chicago is plagued by violence. And local people on the ground there, and business people have welcomed the prospect of additional law enforcement, arguing, that public safety transcends partisan divides. And isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Isn't politics supposed to go by the wayside when people's lives are at risk? Not according to Pritzker, and not according to Mayor Brandon Johnson. They don't want President Trump to come in. And that to me is insane. Do you think that President Trump should wait for an invitation to go to Chicago? Is given the fact that the local politicians appear to be crazy, should President Trump wait for, or actually I should put it, will President Trump, because he recognizes that they're crazy, will President Trump wait for an invitation from crazy man Illinois Governor Pritzker before he sends the National Guard to assist in law enforcement in Chicago? And you take the poll question on X at the Kuhner Report or on WRKO/Kuhner, and it's sponsored by Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. So the poll question is, will President Trump wait for an invitation from Illinois Governor Pritzker before he sends the National Guard to assist in law enforcement? And as another question, should he? Should he wait? Or should he just send people? Let's go to the phone line. 617-266-6868 is the number here. Daryl in Georgia. Daryl, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Daryl?
Good morning, Sandy. Yeah, I got 2 quick points, but before that, I just wish Jeff good health and to be back soon.
Well, I'm sure he appreciates that. He's very touched by all the well wishes.
Okay. Now, these 2 points are going to tie in together, and I'm hoping like hell I'm wrong.
Okay.
I want somebody to prove me wrong, but here's the way I see it. The Democrats are the common denominator in all of these crime-ridden cities, their policies. And something else is the reason why I think it continues. Like I said originally, remember I told you before, I'm from Chicago. The thing is, all of these cities have the same common denominator. They're saturated with crime, minority-driven, because that's the majority of the population, it seems like, and Democrats control it, and they have no intention on solving the problems. But I don't even blame the people for that. That goes to my second point.
Okay.
If you notice something that's part of that common denominator, it's going all over, whether it be Gavin Newsom in California, be Pritzker, Holcomb, you name it. Even your Michelle Wu doesn't want to cooperate with ICE or anything like that up there.
Nope.
Here's what's going on. The problem is it's the voters. Because think about this. You got that diabolical idiot on the path right now to become the mayor of New York City. And everybody can see what he is.
Mom Donnie,
and that's why I said these are the voters' fault. People keep voting for this. They complain about it, but they vote for it. So I understand what President Trump wants to do. I mean, I admire him for it. Clean it up, because once it's cleaned up and people can see a better light, then maybe they'll start voting more conservative. But right now, the minority communities have been voting for so long, for 65 years. I tell some of my friends down here, for 65 years, 95% of the vote from the black vote has been going to the Democrats. And for 65 years, we complain about the same things. But yet, 65 years later, why are we still complaining about something? Because the Democrats have absolutely no intention on solving the problem. They want to campaign on it. This is a social thing. they don't want President Trump coming in there cleaning this stuff up, because if he cleans it up, it's going to prove once and for all.
I'm sorry. Hang on there, Daryl. We're up against a hard break. We don't have much of a choice, but we'll be right back, and we'll come back to you on the other side. This is the Kuhner Report. I am Sandy Shack, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. We're talking about the bizarre response of the Illinois governor and Chicago mayor to refusing help to fight crime. And just before the break, we were speaking with Daryl from Georgia, who says, if I'm misrepresenting what you're saying, tell me, Daryl, who says voters in Chicago are getting what they deserve because, they voted to put these guys in office. And this has been an age-old problem. What do you say, Daryl?
Well, you're not misrepresenting. It's not just Chicago. Like I was telling you, I said, if you notice the pattern all over these major cities that has a large minority population and are all run by Democrats. And when Jamie Raskin was trying to do a little deflection by talking about Republican-run places, no. Yeah. I've lived in different parts of the country, and I can tell you right now, as an over-the-road trucker, I know when I'm going into an area that's run by Democrats. It's obvious because of the way things are run. And it just seems like it's a pattern, because I think, in my opinion, the Democratic Party is a communist party. But I'm like, they run things down. Certain people at the top make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. They never solve the problem. They do a lot of talking. They put a lot of programs. And think about this. All over the country, how many times when there's a problem, the Democratic solution is just keep throwing money into it and eventually it'll get better. Well, if you don't have a program that's actually sound, it's never going to get better. That's why I say I don't think the Democrats ever have any intention of solving these programs. And the people, when they hear all this fluff, vote for it. Mm-hmm. I use Mandami as an example. There's no way in the world that this guy should be even running for office. Yeah. But yet, and Brandon Johnson, when Lori Lightfoot was in there, she was a disaster. And then while they were campaigning, if anybody ever paid attention to what this guy was saying, he wouldn't be in there. Brandon Johnson would have never got in there. But like I said, you have your local medias, sometimes your national, but your media, they're a bunch of communists too. I'm not saying you and Jeff are communists, because you're part of the media too.
I completely understand. I'm not offended. Yeah. And to your point, that I think what a lot of people do, and this is why you have people like Mamdani and Johnson too, for that matter, promising the moon. It sounds good when you are working paycheck to paycheck for Mamdani to come out and say, by 2030 or by 2026, or whatever the date was he gave, we're going to raise the minimum wage in New York City to $30 an hour. And that sounds pretty good when you're making, $10 an hour. But the problem is you don't think things through. And, the people just take it. Mamdani knows what the effect of that's going to be, but he doesn't care because he's just going to try to buy votes with it. What's going to happen is what happened in California when they raised the minimum wage to $25 an hour. And that is, businesses can no longer afford to hire you. So the people who can work will make $30 an hour, but there will be maybe 60% less jobs. So you're going to be out of work, and maybe your second cousin, maybe you'll know 1 out of 4 people who can work, and they'll get the $30, but you won't. And not only that, but companies will leave because they can't afford to stay in business in New York anymore. So that's going to even decrease jobs further. That's actually the result of what happens. But all the voter hears is $30 an hour and think that that's good. Or in Mamdami's case, government-sponsored grocery stores. If you look at where government-sponsored grocery stores have been, they're a disaster. But you don't do that research, or the most voters don't do that research, and they don't hear it. So I completely understand what you're saying. They've had the wool pulled over their eyes, and what the socialist Democrats, socialist/Democrats want is the issue, not the solution. Because the solution gets rid of the issue, gets rid of their speechifying, and that they don't want that. I think you're completely right. Thank you so much for your perspective and for your call, Daryl. I appreciate it very much. I think that it's starting to change, though. I think you're right about that people will vote the easy way, or they'll believe what they're told. But that started to change in the last election, when they began to realize that as you said, change is possible through maybe another party. And I think we saw that with support for Donald Trump growing, and that's why he got elected. I think a lot of people have believed what they were told. That's why you have the likes of Pritzker and Johnson. They will they'll tell you anything to get your vote. They'll tell anything to get the story out, to get the spotlight on them. Because in their arrogance, they think they can say anything and people will believe them. And there is a basis for that, because like giving you the example of my mom, Donnie, in New York, people will believe that that's a good thing, that this will make their life better, when in actuality, it's going to make it more difficult. But I think what started to happen is the lies have gotten too big. And now the Democrats, like Pritzker and Johnson, and hopefully Mamdani, are basically starting to shoot themselves every time they tell a lie. Because if you keep telling people, for instance, that there's no crime, and they just got mugged for the fourth time, or their neighbor down the street was shot, or the store that they work for was broken in for the 8th time, the credibility starts to take a hit, and they begin to realize that these politicians are speaking ragtime, and their credibility begins to be destroyed. And people begin to recognize the nonsense for what it is. And I want to give you an example of the ragtime that these guys are talking about. Pritzker came out and was responding to, President Trump saying, we'll send in the guard to help you with the crime. And Governor Pritzker's response to that was that is an insult to every citizen to suggest that any governor should have to beg, when the president said, ask for our help and we'll come. And he's just saying the president of any political party should not make a governor beg for resources owed to their people. That's what he said. Cut 52, please, Mike.
I refuse to play a reality game show with Donald Trump again. What I want are the federal dollars that have been promised to Illinois and Chicago for violence prevention programs that have proven to work. That is money that Illinois taxpayers send to the federal government, and it's an insult to any and every citizen to suggest that any governor should have to beg the president of any political party for resources owed their people. I'd like to ask a question of my own, and it's one the press should be asking as well. When did we become a country where it's okay for the U.S. president to insist on national television that a state should call him to beg for anything, especially something we don't want?
Well, isn't that the point? Resources owed their people. You said no. There were resources he was willing to hand to you in the form of the National Guard, and you said no. So now he's criticizing President Trump for saying, ask us and we'll come in. All they have to do is ask. First of all, asking isn't begging. Just saying, yeah, we're inviting you in. That's not the same thing as begging. But you said no, we don't want you in here. And now he's criticizing him for waiting for an invitation. My head is just, this, and he doesn't expect you to look at the internal inconsistencies with what he's saying. He thinks that you're just going to absorb the ire of him, say, I'm protecting you against Donald Trump, who is a fascist. That's supposed to be your takeaway from this. And he's just talking ragtime. Do you think I am misreading the situation? Do you understand what Governor Pritzker is saying? Because I'm getting a headache. CJ from Boston, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Sandy. Thank you very much for taking the call. I'll tell you what the insult Pritzker should be talking about. The insult to which over a Labor Day weekend, 54 people were shot and 7 people were killed in Chicago. That is the insult. The fact is they don't want to admit, these leaders in democratic cities and states do not want to admit that they're not doing their job when it comes to stopping violence in their cities and in their states. That's the fact. And for these people to come out to say that the United States military is not qualified to patrol the streets of the United States, that's an insane statement to make. They're qualified enough to go to foreign countries, to protect foreign countries, but they're not qualified enough to protect the cities and states of their own.
And by the way, CJ, just so that people understand what they're talking about here is the National Guard isn't going in and arresting people. The National Guard is providing backup for the existing law enforcement. It's the police that are arresting people. It's the National Guard who stand behind them and enable you to use one policeman in an area where you used to have to use 5, so they can spread out the actual policemen to more areas. That's what the National Guard is doing. Just wanted to point out.
Sandy, I think the National Guard should be welcomed in any community where there is violence to help knock down violence in their communities. I welcome people in a uniform to know that my community is safe. And these Democrats are making the argument, well, do you know what it costs to have the National Guard come in? Well, do you know what it costs you as a taxpayer for the millions of illegals that Joe Biden left over the border that were giving free food, free housing, and free health care, and a free education? You weren't worried about that money that the taxpayers had to shell out and dole out and pay. You weren't worried about that. But you're worried about National Guard troops coming in to back up the local police departments. And that's another point to be made here. Mm-hmm. The statements that are being made here by these mayors and these governors about not complying with any federal order or helping the federal government. I would like to know what the patrolmen's association and police associations throughout this country feel about this, because I talk to a lot of police officers and they welcome helping ICE and the National Guard. It's these local leaders that are saying, well, we don't want the help of the National Guard because they are not doing their job. It's clear what they're doing, and they're not doing their job. So this has been a party of murderers and rapists, and there are only 2 people in this country that reside in the United States of America, and they're not politically affiliated. There are Americans who love this country and Americans who hate this country and Americans who want to see this country fall. They would love to see this country fall one way or the other because they're not happy with themselves. They're not happy in the world that they live in. They want everything given to them like Mandami wants to give them in New York City. He's a communist. And if you notice that Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warrens don't use the term millionaires anymore. It's billionaires now, and the mainstream media is following on that term, billionaires. The reason is these politicians are all millionaires already. Yeah. They would be talking about themselves.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar apparently and the AOC are both hit around the $30 million mark now for net worth, which is, wow, I didn't know you could make that kind of money as a progressive, but I guess you can. No, I completely agree with what you're saying, CJ. It is shocking. And I can tell you what the police union in D.C. said. They welcomed the National Guard and they are thrilled that they did. And they are over the moon about it. So, and I'm pretty sure that most of the other police unions across the country would follow suit, follow in the footsteps of D.C. given the chance to. So thank you for the call, CJ. I appreciate it very much. President Trump seems to be waiting for an invitation before sending the Guard in. Is that how you read what he said? I'm going to play that cut again. He's saying all they have to do is ask and we'll come. Cut 61, please, Mike.
So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks, easier than D.C., but we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us.
All they have to do is ask us. Is he asking for an invitation? And will he wait for one? And I've made that the poll question, by the way, which you can take at X at the Kuhner Report or on WRKO/Kuhner, sponsored by Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Will President Trump wait for an invitation from Illinois Governor Pritzker before he sends National Guard to assist in law enforcement in Chicago? Yes or no to that? I think he is waiting for an invitation. I think there's a very technical reason why he's waiting for an invitation, and that is because he could go into D.C. because that's a federal city. He didn't need anybody's permission to do that, but it's the only federal city in the country. Generally speaking, I think there are exceptions to this. There are emergency exceptions to this, but if you want to go into a state, you need to be invited by the governor. So I think he's waiting for Pritzker to ask him to come in and help. But I don't think there's going to be an invitation extended anytime soon. Do you? And do you think he should go anyway? Do you think he should take them on anyway? Because even though it's going to cause a problem and there's going to be an inevitable injunction trying to stop him from doing it, does he do it to show people what the National Guard can do, like what they did in D.C.? So even though the Guard can only help for a few days because there's an injunction stopping him, do you think he should do it anyway? It's going to cause a big kerfuffle, but it will help the people of Chicago, and they will see firsthand that this is not a fascist military coming to drag them from their homes, but it's actually somebody coming to help drag the muggers from the darkened alleyways of Chicago. What do you think? Should he go anywhere? They can't have... The reason why Pritzker is never going to invite him is they can't have there be a crime problem. They can't admit that there's a crime problem. Because if they admit that there's a crime problem, that their city is crime-ridden, then it became crime-ridden on their watch. And then the fact that the president, their arch enemy, was the solution to that problem is something they just cannot wrap their heads around. And that is why they are making no effort to fight crime. And they would rather see their residents basically abused and assaulted and the victims of crime than do something about it. And if you don't believe me in that assessment, then maybe you would believe Jody Weiss. He's the former police chief of Chicago, and he says that when it comes to Trump cracking down on crime in the city, what Democrats really fear is that would work. Cut 66, please, Mike.
Let's look at the numbers, because to me, if you don't want the Fed help, then you must be happy with the numbers you have in crime. And we all know the only acceptable number for murder would be 0. But you just quoted some numbers. Think about that. In a Labor Day weekend, 54 people shot, 7 killed. And let's look at the year-to-date numbers. Do you realize that every 19 hours and 58 minutes, someone is murdered in Chicago? Every 4 hours and 19 minutes, someone is shot. And the sad part, you ask yourself, who's shooting who? Who's killing each other? 78% of the victims are black. 81% of the offenders are black. So you've got black and black crime, and yet the governor and the mayor say they don't want any help. So to me, when you refuse help, you're saying you're happy with the numbers, and that is absolutely unacceptable in Chicago right now.
Is he right? Is by refusing help, are both Pritzker and Johnson saying they don't care? They're happy with the numbers. It's okay. We're good. We're good with that many people being shot. We don't have a problem with it. And he also, Weiss also called out Pritzker for misrepresenting crime by doing things like, being filmed walking in a nice area and saying, there's no crime here. Cut 66A.
If you think about it, the number one responsibility of government is to protect the people. And I see J.B. Pritzker walking the late 6 o'clock in the morning saying, there's no crime here, it's beautiful. Well, it's 6 o'clock in the morning along the lake. I live pretty close to that area. There is no crime. Let him walk in the Austin neighborhood or the Inglewood neighborhoods at 11 o'clock, because that's where many of his constituents live, and they're not going to feel safe.
Wow. Do you agree with former Chief Weiss? And who do you think has a better handle on the reality of what's in Chicago? Is it former Chicago Police Chief Jody Weiss, or is it Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker? Let's go to John in Groveland. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Good, Sandy. Good morning. First, I'd just like to wish Jeff a speedy recovery, and hope to hear him back on the air soon.
Yes, we were all hoping for that.
Sandy, I'd like to bring attention to what the clip you just played, former police chief, speaking about the statistics in Chicago, the violent statistic. He's reading from a thing that's called anybody can do a simple internet search, and I urge your listeners and also you to do this. It's called the Chicago Shot Clock. It's been around for about 10 or 15 years. It's an accurate running tally of the shootings and murders that occur in Chicago. It is horrific. It is absolutely horrific. It's something that you'd see in a war zone. And Trump doesn't need to be invited to have the National Guard or military come in, because if he invokes the Insurrection Act, he can suspend posse comitatus. That gives him the ability and legal authority as the president, commander-in-chief, to use U.S. military on U.S. soil. And it is an insurrection in Chicago. People are being killed by the thousands. If you tally up the last 10 years, it's astonishing at the number of people that have been shot and killed. And he's right, the statistics are, it's black on black crime. So basically, the politicians in Chicago are condoning the slaughter of black people. It boggles my mind. Your previous call said, yet they keep voting them in. The Democrat lie. You go to any major city, Democrat-controlled in America today, it's a cesspool of violence and crime. And what else is it? It's a beacon of sanctuary for the illegals to come in. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. It's sad is what it is, because they're playing politics with people's lives. And like Jeff always says, I know Trump's people listen to this show, and they're probably mulling this around, invoking the Insurrection Act.
I'm sure.
And that's what needs to be done. That way he can circumvent all the legal attacks that would come if he tried to bring the National Guard in. Insurrection Act, national security, U.S. citizens are being slaughtered, not by the hundreds, by the thousands if you go back years. And it's time to put a stop to this. It's time to clean America up. And basically, like you said, they don't want to, because Trump will come in as the savior to stop this violent crime, shooting, drugs, illegal criminal gangs, just in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're up against the break, John. If you want to hang on, we can come back to you on the other side of the break, because it's a hard break. Chicago residents are being pillaged by crime, but the mayor and governor of Illinois say crime? What crime are you talking about? Should the president wait for an invitation to go in and save the people, rescue the people of Chicago? Should he apply the Insurrection Act and just go in, as opposed to waiting to be invited by two people, Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson, who would rather jump off a cliff than put their people first? We were talking before the break with John from Groveland. John, I'm sorry we were interrupted.
To get back to what I was saying, Sandy, about the blue states and cities that are basically sanctuary beacons for illegals, let's just shine a light on what happened here in Massachusetts. There were several reports yesterday that I read that the DEA in sweeping raids arrested you're going to be astonished at this number, 49 Sinaloa cartel members in Massachusetts in a 7-day period. Now, how many American citizens do you know that are members of the Sinaloa drug cartel? They're narco terrorists that are bringing in fentanyl that are killing hundreds of thousands of citizens. That's an insurrection. So bring them into Boston. Bring Tom Homan, ICE, the National Guard into Boston, into Massachusetts, into Chicago, Maryland, Baltimore. It's systemic in this country. And I think that if Trump were to invoke this Insurrection Act, it would basically put the fear of God into every Democrat politician who sits idly by and lets the violent crime ravage their cities, because it's gonna just keep, if Trump can solve this and make America completely safe, clean up the streets of homelessness, then who do you think is going to get elected in 28? It's going to be probably a Republican. in Trump's footsteps. So, plus he's going to be saving Americans' lives. This is what I don't understand. That why there's such a pushback. Basically, right now, the Democrat Party has been reduced to supporting crime, shootings, murders, and illegal alien criminals. It's pathetic, to be honest with you.
I think it's more than pathetic, John. I think it's insane. I think it's crazy. I mean, I mean certifiable, basically being admitted to a hospital crazy. I think that's what's happening. And I think it's more than just, and I understand, political machinations. I understand posturing and trying to put a shine on a sneaker and maybe skewing things a little bit to make your party look better. But that's not what this is. This is not just a little bit of maneuvering. This is people dying. And you are so bound and determined not to let Donald Trump take credit for anything because you are so desperate to hang on to your power base. That to me is reprehensible. And the fact that you put the power base above people's lives is got to be some form of psychosis, because it's beyond it's just beyond rational thought, I think, John. I'm sorry, you got cut off.
It's evil.
Yeah.
It's pure evil.
Yeah, I think it is evil. And it goes right there, up there, John, with rules for radicals. Do you remember that's the playbook that President Obama followed and Hillary Clinton followed, as a matter of fact, and it's dedicated to Satan. And it's basically, this is a primer that's a primer for what they're doing now. If you look at it, this is what they say to do. So no matter what Donald Trump says, he could say the sky is blue and they say, no, it's not, it's green. They don't care. And they're hoping that you're too stupid to notice the difference, or that you're too naive to question them when they tell you that. So that's what's happening. Thank you so much for the call, John. I really appreciate it. The number is 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. When you hear a caller drop off, it means a line has opened up for you. Let's go to Paulina in Boston. Paulina, welcome to WRKO.
Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome.
Sandy, I have so much to talk about. I was very, very depressed. I still am, but I think President Trump should go in there full force and save the people of Chicago, and then come to Boston. And you know what? Michelle Wu wrecked Boston. I've seen it with my own eyes, with the MBTA going downhill. It was just going downhill. And she said she rode the T to work. No, she don't. She gets transported by the Boston police. And, what I'm trying to say is, where is normalcy? It's not found no more. And you hit it spot on. Spiritual warfare, definitely. It's good versus evil, Sandy, and you just nailed it. I think they all worship the devil, Satan, and what?
Paulina, I don't think they worship the devil. I think that's a bit hyperbolic. I think what they do is they don't think about the ramifications of what they're doing. They're so focused on the what they need, which is their power base, voters, above everything else. They don't think about, well, if I deny National Guard coming in, then somebody's going to die. They don't think of it like that. They think of it, I can't let the National Guard come in because I need to protect my power. And if I let them come in, I'm admitting that there's a problem and I'm one of the people responsible. I can't do it. And so I don't think they think that far ahead. I could be wrong. 617-266-6868. Should President Trump wait for an invitation to go into Chicago with the National Guard, or just go? Can the people of Chicago afford to wait until the president's asked by the governor, because I don't know if the governor is ever going to ask President Trump to come on in. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. The number here is 617-266-6868. Let's go to Mark in Medford. Mark, welcome to WRKO.
Good morning, Sandy. First off, I just want to wish Jeff a happy belated birthday, number one, and number two, a speedy recovery. Hang in there, Kuhner, man. We're with you.
Oh, he appreciates that. I mean, seriously, Mark, he really does appreciate the well wishes. It makes him feel...
Oh, I know he does. I know he does. Now, Sandy, let's put the shoe on the other foot for a minute here, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's just say this was Barack Obama or Joe Biden or even Kamala Harris here offering to help a democratic communist city like Chicago help with crime. Do you really think that this stupid mayor, and I swear to God, Sandy, could quite possibly be the stupidest person on the planet besides Michelle Wu, okay? Mm-hmm. Do you really think that he would refuse the help of those three communists, and would they not be praising them like they were Jesus Christ himself, saying, look at how our president cares about our city and our citizens so much, we graciously accept help from you, Mr. or Mrs. President.
Yeah, no, I think this is a political move, without a doubt. This is, if that were Joe Biden in the White House saying you need some help, they would have accepted with alacrity. The National Guard would already be there. But the difference is Joe Biden would not have offered any help, because, Joe Biden's administration was part of the reason why this problem exists to begin with. And then you have that catch-22 situation. They helped create the problem. And so Trump can't be the answer to the problem because the Democrats created the problem. And if Trump's the answer, then they were wrong. And we can't have that, Mark. So it's kind of how many angels dance on the head of a pin question. But I completely agree with you that it is a political situation, and if they needed help, they would have no trouble accepting from a Democrat.
And the Democrats can't break their secret code from their secret little club that no matter what, we must disagree with Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Because, Donald Trump is the one is exposing the corruption. Donald Trump is the one that is exposing the lies and the stealing of God knows how much money from taxpayers with Ukraine and everything else. Okay, so therefore, at all costs, no matter what, Trump can't win. Trump can't help us, because if we let him help us, guess what? We prove to everybody that once again, Donald Trump was right.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that, Mark. But the problem is the people of Chicago, what good does that do them that the president was right? They still have to live with the idiots that they voted in that would rather protect the criminals than protect the law-abiding residents of the city. That's the problem that they face. Thank you so much for the call, Mark. I appreciate it very much. 617-266-6868 is the number here. Mark raises a really interesting question, and that is the fact that, who's playing politics here? Both the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago say that it's President Trump who's playing politics, coming after blue cities. But is that what's happening? Is it Trump, or is it Pritzker and Mayor Johnson who are playing politics? Because, look at what happened last weekend in Chicago, and so many people have referenced it. But Chicago was covered with bloodshed last weekend. 54 people shot, 7 killed. And if there is anything that points out the ineffectiveness or the inability of the elected officials in Chicago to deal with crime, that statistic alone should do it for you. And if you want a good recap of the numbers and what happened in Chicago, the New York Post has been doing a very nice job of reporting the stats out of Chicago and other cities for quite a while. But they did a report on the numbers on September 1st on Labor Day, just as juxtaposing it against Pritzker continuing to reject the intervention of President Trump and the National Guard. the 54 individuals that were injured were victims of shootings. 7 lost their lives in just a period of 48 hours. Now, take that stat and compare it to the claims of Governor Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson, and they're out there telling people that there's an alleged 32% reduction in homicides. And that's their data, and they're sticking to it. But if you look at the real numbers, the spike in violence like this past weekend showed that their policies are not working. Their stats are skewed. They're not correct. And if you look at the real numbers, you see that President Trump has warned that the real reality of the crime is that it's escalating. Chicago has a very grim statistic, and that is over 266 homicides by the end of August. That's, I mean, think about it, 266 people who had families and loved ones and jobs and lives and friends and made vacation plans and were going to go visit somebody. I mean, these people were snuffed out by the end of August. And yet Pritzker and Johnson refused to accept any help in dealing with the situation. It defies logic. And it also shows that they don't think there's an emergency going on here. Because if they did, how could they refuse help? So they don't recognize that there's any problem, let alone an emergency. And here's part of the problem. Mayor Johnson has pushed community intervention programs with spending about $100 million in the past year. And that's according to the city's own website. But none of that money went toward crime prevention or handling crime or the police departments. So you still have districts like the South Shore, which are riddled with crime, and none of that money that he spent on social programs had anything to do with supporting the police department to stop the crime. Now, the National Guard can transform a city. We've seen it happen in D.C. We've seen it happen in L.A. We've seen that federal action actually works. Both Pritzker and Johnson are completely ignoring the evidence of that. And instead of turning Chicago into a beacon of Democrat resistance, which is, I think, what their purpose is, what they've done is create Chicago as a symbol or a beacon of Democrat weakness. I think that is what has happened. And their resistance and their efforts haven't protected their citizens. It's made them vulnerable and condemned them to live in a hellhole, basically, is what has happened. Now, Chicago leaders, for the reasons that I just put forth, are failing their city. And, Pritzker, his state. And it's so obvious now that I think what they've done, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just being hopeful, I think they've shot themselves in the foot, as I said before. I think they basically are destroying their own careers. One can only hope that they're destroying their own careers. Mayor Johnson, as I said, issued an order blocking the Chicago police from cooperating with any new, federal law enforcement. And then you have Pritzker on TV describing federal law enforcement as an invasion, and that the crime is a manufactured crisis in Chicago, and that the federal crime-fighting initiatives are cover for authoritarian motives. Maybe they should meet with D.C. Mayor Bowser, who used to sing that song until the National Guard went into D.C. and lo and behold, the streets of D.C. are safe again. And so much so that Mayor Bowser is like, you can stay. I'm happy to have you stay. This is good. So given the fact that this works, what the president wants to do works, and the fact that he turned Mayor Bowser around, who really didn't like him and didn't want them there, should the president ignore the wishes of these guys who have turned this into a political issue and go in and help the people of Chicago anyway? That's going to bring a whole new world of hurt. There's going to be injunctions. There's going to be all sorts of cry, see, he's a dictator. Should he care? Or should he just go in and help the people of Chicago anyway? Let's go to John in Peabody. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Sandy. Thanks for having me again.
You're welcome.
Sandy, ego, testosterone, and self-indulgence is the reason why these people who run these positions are basically badgering Donald Trump, because, first off, to ask mommy for help makes them look like incompetent, small, insignificant. They can't.
I'm sorry. Hang on, John. I need you to hang on through the break. We're up against a hard break. We'll be right back. 617-266-6868 is the question here. This is the Kuhner Report. We are talking about whether President Trump should wait to be invited into Chicago by Illinois Governor Pritzker or Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, because I think it's going to be a cold day in hell before they invite him in. But people are dying. Just last weekend, 7 killed, 54 shot. And the question is, does he wait? It's going to cause a whole world of hurt if he does, if he goes in without permission. But should he go in anyway? We were speaking before the break with John from Peabody. John, I'm so sorry we got cut off, but go right ahead.
Thank you. No problem, Sandy. But like I said, ego is what takes over. When you involve a president to come and help you, especially this one, there's no unity. And this mayor just admitted within the last cut you just played before Trump's, is that Trump refused to give him funding. Well, what do you need it for? Why do you need it? You just admitted to the public you got a problem by saying that. That's the problem, is they don't think before they speak. They get so absorbed with themselves, and asking the president for help is making you look incompetent, small, insignificant. You're not doing your job. Instead of being smart, and always being smart by using the media to saying that the president and I are working proudly together to resolve this problem in minutes. But no, I thought you had this. I thought you had this all situated. I don't need Donald Trump to step in and be, interfering with democracy and basically being unconstitutional. No, he's going to badger him until. But if you ask me, I think you should keep these the guard on alert, because I think eventually this is all going to cave in. He's going to eventually end up just caving in and asking him.
Yeah. So you think the guard that they're putting at the Great Lakes base there for immigration should just stay on alert there, because they might be needed in Chicago?
Because, like I says, they're always stepping on their own foot every time Trump wants to help. And Again, I don't think unity is anything that really exists anymore. It says everybody's so self-absorbed with their power, thinking that they got control of everything. Until the media gets their hands on it, and what do? They blame the man up top for interfering. It's not helping, but interfering.
Yeah. It's interesting, John. There's an exception that proves your point, and that was D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, who was just like them. Who was just, screaming and blue, no, we don't need your help, et cetera, et cetera. And then, she had no choice because, Donald Trump has the power to go into a federal city. But then when she saw what was happening and she saw the quality of life improve, she's like, okay, screw this. And she just jumped right on board the bandwagon. So, that was, and so she showed. I've never been a big Muriel Bowser fan, but that to me, showing that she put her people first, and she said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm going with it because it's working, and they can stay, and the surge helped, and you were right, and here I am. That to me, if I were in D.C. and I didn't like her before, I would probably vote for her, because she's just shown me that she put the people of her city first, and that she was willing to admit she made a mistake, and that she was willing to work with Trump. Those are all things to me that a leader needs to do. And so I would absolutely vote for her. It depends on obviously who the opponent is, but I would obviously vote for her more than I would ever vote for somebody who still denies that there's a problem in Chicago.
Well, the reason Biden never helped with the California fires, the one in Hawaii, all of these disastrous things that happened because he felt like people were going to step on his toes. They were going to kick him out. He's going to lose his popularity. Again, it's just everybody gets so absorbed in their positions that, like I said, no one's willing to work and unify. It doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. Even today, even with the standards of people's lives, they just don't want help anymore. Everyone says, "I've got this."
Yeah.
Until you know, like I said, until you realize the problem is at hand and you don't.
Well, and I think the reason behind that, as we've spoken of today, is the fact that a lot of times these problems that they need help with are of their own making. And if they admit there's a problem, they have to admit they're wrong. And that's bad to begin with. But then to admit that your arch enemy is right on top of that, that's why they can't admit it, which is why I have more respect for D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser now than I did before, because she's just admitted I was wrong. And I need the help, and thank you. And, you know, to me, to be able to admit that you're wrong about something and to do something for a greater good is the hallmark of somebody who is actually understands what a civic office is. And I never thought of that. I never thought she was one of those people before. I always thought that she was a completely self-absorbed, aggrandizing politician. And she showed me that she isn't. And, you know, good for her. Maybe that was a personal evolution for her. I don't know. But my respect for her went up. Did it go up for you, John, when you saw that she said, okay, this is working, I'm good?
That's the example that needs to be set over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's what people need to understand is this man's not here to interfere. His goal was to save the United States, period. Every state, every city, every inch of this country. But no one looks at it that way.
Yeah.
All he is an interference and an inconvenience in destroying popularity for the Democrats.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly, as they do so many times, I think the Democrats were accusing Donald Trump of politicizing the crime in Chicago when it isn't, when it was they themselves who were doing exactly that. Thank you so much for the call, John. I appreciate it very much. The number here is 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. When you hear a caller drop off, it means a line has opened up for you. And the text number is 70470 on the text line. 617 says, Sandy, seriously, what's the guard supposed to do? Go in with machine guns and tanks and just open fire on the citizens? Yeah, that will be helpful. Nobody is suggesting that. I don't recall ever seeing anybody suggest that. That's not what they did in D.C. What they do is the guard goes in, and the guard doesn't arrest anybody, and they're not pulling guns on anybody. What the guard does is in their numbers, uniformed guard go in and support the police. So when the police make an arrest, they have guard to help them. When the police need to do a raid, the guard helps them. So the guard is not acting as the police force. The guard is supporting the existing police force. That is how they helped in D.C., and that is what President Trump is suggesting they could do. And that's what they did in L.A., and they were also assisting federal ICE officers as well. And so that is what the guard does. They don't act as a police force. They support the existing police force. So that question's kind of snarky, and it's very it's taking a premise and taking a false premise and putting it out there and trying to put that into people's minds that, oh, the guard are going in with tanks and they're going to take. That's the whole militarized thing that Pritzker wanted you to think it's happening. That's not what's happening. That's not what the guard does. So, seriously, get a grip. Let's see, 207 says Chicago and D.C. can't hire enough cops because governors, mayors, and city councils don't back them up. Their antics of 2020 made being a cop unattractive. That is so true, and that is the root of the problem. The blue city mayors, through defunding the police forces, are responsible for the crime surges. That's one of the policies that's responsible for the crime surges. And they can't let Donald Trump be the fixer. Because, that's bad. That's very, very bad. So they just ignore the problem. They just, turn away from the problem and pretend that it doesn't exist, because then we don't need Donald Trump's help. So, should President Trump wait to be invited to go to Chicago, or should he just go? Never mind the fact that that's going to be a whole world of hurt if he does that. Let's go to Eddie in Charlestown. Eddie, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Good, Sandy. Good morning, Sandy. How are you today?
I am fine, thank you. So what do you think? Should President Trump wait to be invited?
No, absolutely not. He's the president of the United States. We're one country. We're not 50 different countries. We're one country. So he's the CEO of this country. He's the president by the people. We elected him. And I think he should do one step further. Instead of sending these troops into democratic cities that are popping up, I think he should do one step further and institute martial law in this country until this whole mess is cleaned up. Enough is enough. You mentioned early on the show that there was over 200 murders in Chicago. In 1980s, I was in Turkey in the Navy. That was the heartland of terrorism, and they didn't even have that much violence. So you're talking Chicago, over 200 murders. Send martial law for 6 months a year, how long it clears this whole mess up, deport all the illegal immigrants, clean this up, take the power away from the Democratic mayors and governors, straighten this whole thing out once and for all, instead of band-aiding it in New York, D.C., Chicago, Portland, L.A., because what's going to happen is if you just Band-Aid the problem, you might fix it here, then it pops up somewhere else. Enough is enough. It's leading to it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it keeps on continuing the way it's going. You will see martial law in this country within a year, and he should do it right now. Put the lid on a boiling pot and let it simmer down. That's my opinion.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that opinion with us, Eddie. I do. I don't agree with you, but thank you so much for sharing it with us. First of all, you're right. We have one country. It's not 50 different countries, but what it is 50 different states, and each of those states has rights, and it is up to the governor to invite a National Guard into his state. That's how our country was formed. That's the very fabric of our country. So you just can't ignore that. There are exceptions to that. And, if there's an insurrection, that is one of the exceptions. And so the president would have to declare that there's an insurrection to go in and bring the National Guard in, which would bring a whole world of hurt. This is not an easy thing he can't just decide, I need to go to Chicago. It's a really big decision. And it will, in fact, be fought tooth and nail in the courts, I'm sure, if he decided to do that. Martial law is very, very, very dangerous. And I hear your frustration. I understand your frustration, and I know it's shared by so many people. But it is not just a little step too far. It is a massive overreach to do martial law. And you can't say just ignore the mayors. These are elected officials. The governors, the mayors, all these people you dislike are elected by the people of their counties, their districts, their states. And if you ignore them, you're ignoring the will of the people. And then what you have is what the Democrats have been screaming about, and that is that President Trump will be a dictator. Yes, if he did that, declared martial law, he could, in fact, probably clean the country up in 6 months to a year, but we would also have a civil war. And it would be because President Trump has declared himself a dictator and ignored the voters who put him into office to begin with. They put him into office because they trusted him. They trusted him not to do something like declare martial law. It's draconian. And I feel the frustration. I understand the frustration. But you have to find a way to work with what we have. You have to preserve the Constitution at the same time that you bring law and order. And that's not easy. That is a tightrope walk. And there is a way to do it. And President Trump keeps testing and trying to find the way to do it. And he did in D.C. and it was effective, and I have faith that he will find a way to help Chicago. Now, the question is that by waiting for an invitation, or is that by declaring an insurrection and going in? I mean, either way is trouble, but Chicago is a very troubled place and needs help. So that's the issue. You can't defend the Constitution by throwing it out the window. And that's what martial law would do. So I appreciate you trying to think outside the box and what to do, but I think you've gone a little bit too far there with the suggestion of martial law. I think what we need to do instead is find a way to work within the law, within the civilian law that exists, because I don't know many libertarians, independents, or Republicans who would agree with martial law either. And the Democrats would scream, "This is what we told you would happen," and they would be right. And so the last thing you want is to give them any indicia of being right in this particular situation. So I think you need to listen to the voice of the people, and some of these people are elected officials. Now, some of the people who are putting them in there have been misguided, I believe, but that doesn't mean they don't deserve their vote. What's happened in Chicago is partially Chicagoans' fault for electing these people, but I think they were duped. Some of them are naive, some of them are duped, and some of them owe their allegiance to the Democratic Party for whatever their livelihood is, like the teachers' union. But not all the people feel this way, feel that Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson are right and have put their best interests at heart. There are a bunch that don't. And there was a very interesting cut. I played it the other day. I can play it again today, from a Chicago alderman who has his finger on the pulse of his district where he works. And he has been horrified. His name is Ray Lopez, and he ripped Pritzker and Johnson for refusing to work with the president. Cut 25, please, Mike. 25.
We should be working to make sure that we are in coordination with each other. There's nothing stopping the mayor of the city of Chicago, the governor of the state of Illinois, from picking up the phone and reaching out to the president of the United States and saying, what can we do to be on the same page? We should all be looking to continuously decrease the amount of victims in our city and in our state. And instead, we're getting into this tit-for-tat social media back and forth nonsense, which is only putting the people of Chicago and the people of Illinois in the middle, in the crosshairs of the criminals who are going to use this time to exploit and go crazy, as we're continuing to see this weekend, where we've had multiple mass shootings, multiple victims, and no one wants to talk about them. I hear the governor talking about an invasion, an insurrection. I hear the mayor writing useless orders against the federal government. But what no one is talking about is, if our crime stats are decreasing, why can't we push with Donald Trump's help and decrease them even more? How many victims are we comfortable with? Because that's ultimately the subtext of what the mayor and the governor are saying, is that we are comfortable with the amount of victims we have right now. We don't need to improve on our numbers any further than that.
I think that's the voice of the people, what you just heard right there. And it may not have been the voice of the people 6 months ago, but I think that's what it is now. I think more and more people are coming around to Alderman Lopez's point of view, saying, how many people need to die for you to keep posturing like this? I mean, it's a common sense response to what's happening in Chicago. I mean, it's pretty clear, isn't it? Crime goes down as the risk of arrest and conviction goes up. So if you have more police around, if you have National Guard helping the police, then that all goes up and safety is increased. You know, and here's the thing, that these politicians, not Alderman Lopez, but Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson, are asserting that Chicagoans do not perceive violent crime as a real issue. That's what they're putting out there, that people don't think this is a real problem, so we don't really have to respond to it with President Trump's help. But they're wrong. More and more people are being affected by crime, and more people are recognizing the fact that it's a huge issue, and we need President Trump's help. And I think you're going to see that in the next election, but, you know, if you can wait that long. So I think that it's scurrilous at this point for these for these politicians to say, no, we don't have crime. We don't, all to protect themselves and to protect their reputation. And I think it's backfiring them on right now. So what President Trump does is very important coming up. Does he wait to be invited? That's going to make the politicians there who are denying that they need help look worse and worse and worse as more people die. But do you want people to die to make your point? That's why it's such a difficult decision for President Trump. He doesn't want to override states' rights. He doesn't want to declare an insurrection. He doesn't want to go in where he's not asked to go in. But if he doesn't, people die. That's a really difficult decision. And I'm not sure which way he should go. And I'm wondering if you can figure out which way he should go. Let's go to Bob in Dedham. Bob, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Sandy, very good, thank you. So you actually are talking, your last few words there were exactly my point I want to make, is that I think there's probably some underlying reasons why Trump doesn't just run right into Chicago and with the National Guard. And he's proven in D.C. that, it worked, and he has that in his back pocket. And you look at a big city like Chicago, democratically run. I think he's best in waiting a little bit, and that will show the people of Chicago that they will start thinking, well, why aren't our elected officials doing something about this, and why does the federal government have to come in? And maybe they'll start thinking differently about their local politicians. And again, if Trump was to go right in quickly, it would bolster the local politicians' attitude towards Trump being, a dictator and whatnot. So I think with him waiting, I think it covers a lot of ground. And Trump is playing 3D chess where they're playing, checkers, for God's sakes. It just seems like that. Ultimately, I think they have to cave and allow the federal government to come in and help. I mean, the citizens of Chicago have suffered enough, haven't they?
Well, I think they have, but I'm not sure that there is such thing as enough for Pritzker and Johnson. I don't see them caving, to be honest with you.
Well, again, if they start to see a more of the community and more of the people start to say, well, what are we doing here? Why are you allowing this? And it changes the wave. The wave starts getting bigger and bigger against them, maybe, and then they're politically motivated, obviously. So once they see the majority of people start.
Yeah, to finish your point, I'm sorry, we're up against a break, Bob. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner on the Kuhner Report. President Trump has said he will go into Chicago with the National Guard to fight crime if he is asked. The mayor of Chicago responded to that with, under no circumstances. He's argued that jailing offenders, by the way, this is one of his arguments, besides the fact he thinks that President Trump is authoritarian and this is overreach. He says that jailing offenders is racist, immoral, and unholy, and does not curb violent crime. We've tried that. It doesn't work. Did he fall down and hit his head? Jailing people does not curb violent crime. I think Chicago is an example of exactly the opposite of that. Look what happens when you do the no bail, when you don't prosecute lower levels of crime. You don't, you take away money from the police. You have a rise in crime. You have 7 people dead over last weekend and 54 shot. We're not even talking all the crime. That's just the gun crime. So, wow. And he's not the only Democrat who believes that arresting criminals is racist or that President Trump is targeting black mayors in regard to his crime jihad. Over in Baltimore, Mayor Brandon Scott also afraid of a visit from the National Guard, is yelling the same tired old accusation. Cut 128, please, Mike.
There's a target on the backs of black mayors in the United States of America. I heard that the black mayors have been chit-chatting amongst one another, that you all have been having meetings. Can you take us inside? Because what is the strategy here?
Well, first and foremost, we have to let folks know that and call it out. It's very clear that the target is on us, right? And I think that folks have to understand what they're trying to say here. What they're trying to say is that we cannot be a part of the solution of reducing a problem, because when we know, if we're going to call a spade, when you think about the way that those folks think, especially someone young, black, and male like myself, I can't be a part of the solution because I am the problem, right? That's the way that they think.
Well, you could be part of the solution, except that you're saying no to help. You don't want the National Guard to come in. Is fighting crime racist? Because that's what I'm hearing now from Brandon Johnston and Brandon Scott. Is this what the Democrats do when they don't have a response for something, is to go to this tired old diatribe that if they don't like something, it's racist. If they don't want to agree to something, it's racist. Is fighting crime racist, or is this just deflection? Is that what you're hearing? Let's go to Joan in Boston. Joan, welcome to WRKO. How are you? Joan?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, can you hear? Hi, sorry, I have a bad connection, I guess. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. So Mayors Johnson and Mayor Scott say Trump coming in to help get crime in hand is a racist thing. Do you agree?
No. If you ask the people of the west side and south side of Chicago, they would disagree. They're begging for Trump to come in. They're going to the city council meetings, arguing with Johnson, pleading with him. He's just so stubborn, and his ego is more important than the people of Chicago. That's the sad thing. We moved here 7 years ago. We kept our house in Chicago because the plan was we were going to move back. I'm born and raised in Chicago. I love my city. And because of the crime and the way things have changed and escalated, we sold the house in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah. I was going out there last year, and a friend of mine said, oh, by the way, we were told if you want to get gas in Chicago, do it before 6 p.m. because there's been a lot of carjackings.
Oh, gosh.
And I don't live on the west side. I mean, we didn't have a house on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
So, things have drastically changed. Something needs to be done. This is ridiculous. You're offered help. Take it.
Yeah, I can't. That's the thing, that it's one thing to be having serious problems and denying that you have problems and we'll deal with it. But you got somebody who says, I have the answer, and look at D.C. I just did this here, and look how happy they are, even though they're progressive liberals too. They're very happy with what happened. But they were dragged into it kicking and screaming. But once they realized that this was good for everybody, they jumped on board. I don't understand with that example, even if you hate Donald Trump, as Mayor Bowser does, why you wouldn't put your people first. I think there's something psychotic about that.
I hate to tell your audience, 54 in a weekend is really nothing. That was kind of low. Every weekend, it's a free-for-all. Once Friday comes, this is common. It's nothing new. And this has been going on for decades. It's gotten worse in the last 10 years, yes.
Do you
in the last
think,
5 years.
Do you think that President Trump should go in without being asked? Do you think he should find a way?
I think the people want that, especially the people on the west side and south side where most of these crimes are committed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they want it. They can't live like this any longer.
If President Trump goes in, if they get a handle on crime, would you consider moving back to Chicago?
Absolutely, I would.
Yeah.
It was a great city. I mean, now you walk down Michigan Avenue. I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago or any of your listeners.
Yeah.
I mean, Chicago Avenue was that was our pride and joy. Now it's sad. it's totally changed.
I have not been to Chicago in maybe 10 years, but I've went a number of times before that. Michigan Ave was amazing, just a beautiful place, as a matter of fact. And I've been to a number of big functions in Chicago, and they were all, I have nothing but fond memories of any time I've spent in Chicago, but I haven't been in 10 years. 617-266-6868. President Trump says, I will go to Chicago with the National Guard and help you out with crime if you want me to. You got to ask. I think it's going to be a cold day in hell before either Pritzker or Mayor Johnson, and it has to be Pritzker. He's the guy that has to give the thumbs up. We'll invite him. Should he wait for that invitation? Let's go to Jimmy in Dorchester. Jimmy, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Yes, you should go to Chicago. You should go to New York. You should come to Boston. I'm going to tell you why. You know how many people are shot in Dorchester over the years? How many have died from drug overdoses? 3 years ago, I was in County Hospital when we still had a County Hospital. I was crying because I was there around Christmas. What I saw when they brought in these guys that were drug overdoses from fentanyl, and the girl, little baby girl and her son crying for their daddy and screaming, and he died from drugs, and it broke my heart. Yeah. But here's the part that really got me, because I was there for a week. And then you brought in the cases where guys were shot, and you see the same thing, the same scenario, where family members would be weeping, and they'd be praying to God, but they weren't able to save them. That's how bad it is. And he's got to come. And that Mayor of Boston, have we done any audits on where the money's going, who's it going to, and audits on who's giving her the money? From what I hear from friends and from what I see in Dorchester, a lot of the guys dealing with drug dealers that I know are Chinese. Is she involved? Because I'm hearing from these people, the young kids that are druggies, and they tell me, is this true? Is she in cahoots with Chinese mobsters?
Well, I think let's not go there. That's what you call that's a slander. We have no idea about any of that, and there's no proof of that. And that's just at the moment that's just baseless accusations. So we don't go there, Jimmy. That's not something that we can support unless there's proof of something like that. You don't do that on the air. That's just not right. But I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. If that ever becomes a story, then absolutely positively we will put it on the air. But until such time, you don't just toss out accusations like that without any kind of proof based on rumor that you heard on the streets. But thank you for your call, and I'm so sorry. I know what you're talking about in regard to the emergency room situations. I've seen that myself when I was a patient in an emergency room. I saw somebody who they were desperately trying to save coming in like that too, and it does break your heart. And yeah, so that's the question that alderman and Mr. Lopez asked. It goes, how many deaths is enough? At what point do Pritzker and do Mr. Johnson say, enough's enough? I instead of votes, I need to protect lives. I think that they need to look in the mirror and ask themselves that question because too many families go through what you were describing. Let's go to Dan in New Hampshire. Dan, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Good, Sandy. Thank you very much for taking my call. You're doing a great job. Point being here is we got death and destruction down in the lower levels of Chicago. I mean, violence, it's rape, nobody's doing nothing about it. Trump wants to do something about it, but what we got to realize here is these Democrats are Marxist, socialist, communist Democrats. Okay, their voting grades are 0 to 25. They vote against your U.S. Constitution 75 to 100% of the time. Okay, so these people, and when you look at Pritzker, okay, the family's tied into millions and millions, maybe hundreds of millions of USAID. They have 64 NGOs. Okay, Governor Pritzker was even getting money from two of his companies from COVID to Path Group and Q Health. He got $13 million. Okay, the Pritzker family, okay, is even got a foundation called Taiwanese Foundation. Okay, it donated money to even Republicans like John McCain and Mitt Romney. Okay, on top of it, J.D. Pritzker in 22 in his budget for $55.3 billion included $500,000 to a private college, Lincoln College, that had been closed for 3 years. So what's going on? Where did the money go? So it's when you got corruption at the top, you got a severe problem because the people in between and at the bottom are stuck with nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got cases, okay, where when you have the judicial not even on top of it violating the law, okay, with Trump, right? They're violating the law by legislating from the bench, okay? You got the voters are trying to do their jobs, right? In Massachusetts, the guy did bring up a good point. You got House Speaker Marino, Senate President Spilka, and Governor Healy, who are refusing to comply. They put the ballot question, and 72%, that's nearly three-quarters of the voters, voted for a forensic audit. And they're saying no. So we the people, where's our power, right? And on top of it, look in New Hampshire. You got Dirty Road Judge Ruloff, who ignores, okay, the next step in Daniel Richards' case on illegal and unconstitutional election laws. He's dismissed his case twice, and Daniel Richards reapplied, okay? And the reason is because this trial would blow the lid on the entire country. It's the only country on election laws being violated, okay? Because they're illegally and unconstitutionally changing them without the consent of the voters. You have to put it on the ballot, get 2/3 majority vote from we the people.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Dan. I mean, I understand what you're saying. And you asked the question, where is our power? Our power is in doing our due diligence and voting accordingly, as you are suggesting. You have to do your research into the candidates that are running. You have to take a look and find out if they're telling the truth or not. Like people in Chicago. We had Joan call earlier who was from Chicago, and she basically says this guy has been putting his party first for a long time. And the results are what you see now in Chicago, to the point where she sold her house out there. She didn't want to move back, even though it's her home, because it is so dangerous. The people, the voters of Chicago, needed to start paying attention to what was happening and not just go with, who Uncle Fred is employed by, or, whose members the teachers union is telling them how to vote. You don't have to vote the way the union tells you to. As far as I know, when you go into the voting booth, it's just you and the pen and the piece of paper. There's nobody in there with you. You can vote however you need to vote, regardless of what your union tells you how to vote, or your party boss tells you how to vote, or your Uncle Fred tells you how to vote. So I think everybody has to take responsibility for their own vote. And if we do that, then you're not going to have people like Pritzker and people like Brandon Johnson in power anymore. I think that's one of the keys. Thank you so much for the call, Dan. I appreciate it very much. 617-266-6868. Should President Trump ignore the wishes, basically, because they've made it pretty clear they don't want him, of both Pritzker and Johnson in Chicago, and bring the National Guard in to help clean it up? Do the people of Chicago need that to happen, or can he wait to be invited? Because I think pigs are going to be flying by the window before they invite him to come in. Let's go to Harry in Maine. Harry, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Hey, Sandy, good morning. I'm going to be very brief this morning. Mm-hmm. First of all, I want to nominate Darrell from Georgia. He was so articulate.
He was.
And he was so accurate.
It was a great way to start the show. Yeah.
Yep, and what should be done. And the results of cleaning up that city will speak for themselves, and we need to change the voting mentality, and he nailed it. The other thing I wanted to say, Sandy, was I would invite anybody that's listening that's on the left, including Buddy Bill from Sudbury, anyone in the Boston Red Sox organization, starting with John Henry. Where is BLM? Henry put that large flag on and draped it over the left field wall several years ago. Mm-hmm. And I, for one, boycotted the Red Sox since. And I just feel that, the hypocrisy is so thick here that you can cut it with a knife. So I put it out to your listeners, anyone who's an advocate for BLM and that phony baloney anarchist organization, let them pick up the phone and give you a call. I'd like to hear where are they now? Well, it's documented that there's black on black crime, and innocent people are getting shot and killed daily in that city, in these other cities, Baltimore, and all the other ones we know about, L.A., everywhere else. Where is BLM? And that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you for the call, Harry. I appreciate it very much. That was a very succinct, articulate point. It is kind of ironic that they are calling, they meaning Mayor Johnson, both Mayor Johnson in Chicago and Mayor Johnson or Mayor Scott in Baltimore are calling President Trump wanting to go in and help with crime prevention and to combat crime as a racist thing. It's a racist thing. Why would it be racist? Well, because both those mayors are black. Well, if it's, would it be okay if both those mayors were white? I mean, does it matter what color the mayors are? I don't think it matters. I think what matters is that people are being killed. People that are black and white are being killed. And anybody who cries racist when you have 78% of a massive murder rate is black on black as opposed to any other racial mixture, doesn't know what they're talking about if they think that it's a racist situation. That's their story and they're sticking to it because they don't know what else to say. I'm Sandy Shack, filling in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. And claims have been made that President Trump's plan to use the National Guard to fight crime is a racist thing to do. And if that doesn't work for you, the Dems say it's politicizing crime because the president is only targeting blue-colored cities. Is that true? Do you think he's just targeting blue cities, blue states, the Democrats, to point out that they are bad when it comes to dealing with crime? Or is he being equally, is he just going after crime as opposed to blue crime, blue state crime? Do you think he's being evenly handed when he says he's willing to go anywhere? Now, Kristi Noem was asked that question just over the weekend regarding saying, is he targeting people here? And she says, absolutely not. Cut 20, please, Mike.
You mentioned there are a bunch of cities in Democratic-controlled states with Democratic mayors, and there have been a lot of questions asked about that focus. There are Republican cities with major crime issues as well, and we haven't heard about plans to deploy, say, to Dallas or to Oklahoma City or to cities in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi that have considerable crime rates, in some cases higher percentage-wise than those other cities you mentioned. Are there plans to go to red states and Republican-controlled cities in this kind of way?
Absolutely. Every single city is evaluated for what we need to do there to make it safer. So we've got operations that, again, I won't talk about details on, but we absolutely are not looking through the viewpoint at anything we're doing with a political lens.
She says no political lens. Do you believe her? I believe her because, President Trump just yesterday mentioned in the same breath when he was talking about Chicago, New York, saying, hey, Louisiana has asked him in. Cut 61A, please, Mike.
Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. You're not reporting any crime because there is none. They said crime is down 87%, and I said, no, it's not. It's down 100%. We have a great thing going. I could do that with Chicago. We could do that with New York. We could do it with Los Angeles. So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago or do we go to a place like New Orleans where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quad bad.
So Louisiana is on his list of where to go next. Does that sound like a political issue to you, that he's picking states based upon the major ruling party in them? It sounds to me like he's going after crime. That's what he promised that he would do when he ran for president. He would take care of crime was one of the big issues, and he's just checking the boxes off, is what it sounds like to me. Do you think I'm wrong? Let's go to Larry in Uxbridge. Larry, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir? Larry, are you there?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Good day. Happy Thursday to you, my good lady.
To you
and
too.
all the best to the Kuhner man. I suggest the media do some work and maybe put some totals on the shootings that are going on in every city, like they did with the COVID deaths. Maybe that'll catch people's attention and put a little pressure on these politicians, so to speak, to do something. Put a little pressure on them. I mean, like it's out of hand. It's people are just fed up. It's ludicrous. It's insane. Is what's going on. It's got to stop. Really, it's got to stop.
I actually do have crime statistics, Larry, if you're interested. That'll show you, what the homicide rates are of the 20 cities. And this is just to show that I don't think that President Trump is picking on blue cities. I think because of progressive policies, those cities have a pretty high crime rate, but he's not picking them because they're blue. He's picking them for high crime rates, because of the 20 cities in the country with the highest homicide rates, 14 are in blue or purple states. And I can give you a list. St. Louis, New Orleans, Detroit, Washington, D.C. was one, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Richmond, Chicago, Compton, Oakland, Hartford, Rochester, Syracuse, Greensboro, Dallas, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Newark, Denver, Los Angeles. Those are the top crime cities. And of those 20, 14 are in blue or purple states. Then I think of those that are not in purple states, the 6 that are in red states, only one of those has a Republican mayor, and that's Dallas's Eric Johnson. He was twice elected as a Democrat and then switched over to become a Republican in his second term. The other 5 cities, despite being in red states, have been under Democratic control for years, if not decades. I think it's been 12 years since Greensboro last had a Republican mayor, and the last time there was a Republican mayor in St. Louis was 1949. Atlanta hasn't had a Republican mayor since 1879. New Orleans hasn't seen one since 1872. So I'm noticing a correlation, Larry, with Democratic leadership, not because they're bad people, but because they followed this whole defund the police, let's put our money into social programs instead of SWAT teams. And this is what has happened. So I don't think the president is targeting blue cities. I think he's targeting crime, which happened to be in blue cities. Do you agree? I'm sorry, Larry, I can't hear you.
I think you were misinterpreting me. I wasn't having him. I didn't say he was targeting blue cities.
Oh no, I don't. I'm agreeing with you.
All right, I'm just saying in general. Don't you think the media should just put the daily shootings and the murders on the television screen?
Well,
so
no,
people can
Larry, that's my point. That's why we're saying these are the statistics, and I'm agreeing with you that they should be publicizing these statistics. This is what we should be seeing instead of the stories that President Trump is using this as a political weapon. When this statistic showed that it's not. These are the highest. These are the cities in the country with the highest homicide rates. They happen to be, not all of them, but they happen to be in a lot of them happen to be in blue cities, and it's not so. It's about crime, not about politics. So I was agreeing with you, Larry.
And the other thing is, I don't know if you saw it, but I don't think one student in that city passed the math test, the standards math test.
In what, Chicago?
Yes,
wow.
And that's horrific. Isn't that sad?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, the whole place just needs to be just wiped out from top to bottom. With it seems like in every category: education, the police, the politicians. I mean, how bad does that have to get? And I don't know if you remember a few years ago, one of the mayors, maybe back in the 70s, actually slept in Capri Green in the high rises. They're trying to prove a point, and after like 2 days, he or she said, "I'm out of here. This place is insane."
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. And I mean, and a lot of these people, Larry, say, ask the question. Well, first of all, you have the two mayors, the mayor of Baltimore and the mayor of Chicago, saying he's targeting black mayors. He's not targeting black mayors. He's targeting crime. He doesn't care what color the mayor is, one. And two, people ask, what does it matter who the mayor is of a city? It matters because crime is local, and local law enforcement is what controls the crime level wherever you are. And if you've fallen down on the job in regard to local crime suppression, then there's nobody but to blame than yourself. And so Mayor Johnson and Mayor Scott need to look in the mirror and say, okay, it doesn't matter what my party is or what my skin color is or what my gender is. I have not done a good job on law enforcement. Instead, they're trying to blame President Trump, saying he didn't give us sufficient resources. Well, he's offered to give you resources and you've turned it down, A, and B, the federal government does not supply local crime enforcement resources. That's your job. You had a budget. Your job was to put as much into local law enforcement as you needed to, and you didn't do it, And so what we have here is the results of progressive mayors and progressive district attorneys too, because don't forget, your public safety as a resident is dramatically impacted by the DA who decides what cases to charge and makes decisions regarding bail. It's affected by your police department and by whether the local politicians support and adequately fund that police department and the prosecutor's office. It doesn't matter where these cities are. If Democrats run them, it's more likely than not that residents are stuck with local prosecutors who won't prosecute crimes, police departments that are understaffed and demoralized, and criminals who, if they're caught, get released on cashless bail, and political machines that keep these people in power decade after decade after decade. That is why the cities that are mostly mentioned in regard to crime are blue. It's not because they're being targeted. It's because they've set themselves up to be bastions of crime. Thank you for the call, Larry. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Sam in North Andover. Sam, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Sam?
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Enjoy listening to you this morning.
Thank you.
A lot of good points have been made this morning, and I agree with them. And I think, the problem in some of these black communities is it just demonstrates that they've been abandoned by the Democrats in these places, that they've been taken for granted. Their votes are expected every 2 or 4 years, and the politicians who could make their lives better don't do anything. They just take their vote and then forget about them. And then the point about the black mayors, black governors, whatever. I think, in racial issues, there's a term, disparate impact. Well, the criminal activity, unfortunately, appears to be happening more in those places. And as you said, that's where Trump is going, not based on the color of people's skin, but based on the level of crime. And the last point I'll just make is I thought it very ironic that this was the 20-year anniversary of Katrina. As I'm sure you recall, back during Katrina, Bush was attacked as being racist, did not provide help to the folks who were affected by the hurricane because they were black. Now Trump's being attacked for trying to help with crime in areas, and they're saying, oh, it's because they're black. It seems like, this race card is played, not with any integrity.
Not rationally. It's not applied rationally. Yeah. And I thought it funny that I said, gee, they made a big thing about this. Like, Bush purposely, slowed the aid or, didn't do what the federal government didn't do what they were supposed to do because of the racial makeup of the area most affected in the hurricane. And then here, it's the opposite. They're being faulted for trying to help. Yeah. And then so it's the same old playbook, actually. It's
the race card.
Yeah.
It's just, different circumstance. So
yeah, apparently the race card is something you can play in any game at any point in time whenever you don't like something. That's what it's come to mean. So that when a charge of racism used to mean something and be appalling, now it seems to have, I think, lost its gravitas because it's been overused, and it's been used in situations like this where I think this is ridiculous. I mean, I've seen racially inequitable policies in the past, but this is not one of them, in my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. I don't think it is. I think this is not about race. I don't think this is about politics. I think this is 100% about crime. And you may or may not agree with me, but I think Mayor Bowser in D.C., who was crying racism to begin with, isn't saying that anymore. Thank you for the call, Sam. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Gardner in New Hampshire. Gardner, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Hi, Sandy. Hey, thanks for taking the call. It's been an absolutely fascinating show. And I just wanted to call in to mention one thing, which is, this is, I often try to look at it as an educational learning opportunity for myself or any of my students or whatever. And this is one of those instances where I can bring up to the kids, this actually is a situation where if we look at the Constitution in Article 4, Section 4 actually requires that a state legislature or if the state is not in session, have to request the federal troops or federal forces to come in before. And so both Trump and
sorry,
Pritzker,
Gardner, you were breaking up there. Can you repeat what you just said? Just the last sentence.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say that the Constitution in Article 4, Section 4 actually says that the federal troops under a president or anything can only go into a state if the state legislature or the governor, if the legislature is out of session, request that they go in. So both Pritzker and Trump, they're not actually explicitly mentioning it, but by saying he doesn't want them to come in, he's not making the call, they're actually tacitly acknowledging Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. Yeah. So that's one of the big things to sort of learn about this and in this entire debate, which is a constitutional lesson that can come out of it.
It can. And so the question, so this is why we were talking about earlier, the president can go in if he's invited, but he can also, if there's an insurrection declared, bypass Article 4, Section 4. But that, that's a really slippery slope, one. And two, that immediately that's going to be challenged in federal court. And so we're going to have to deal with challenges and legal machinations, and it's a huge headache. So my question basically is, does the president wait for an Article 4, Section 4 invitation to go in, or does he roll the dice, try to declare an insurrection and go in anyway, and buy himself a whole slew of headaches? And that would only be because, in my opinion, he can't stand to see more people die, because that's the cost of waiting, are more people dying. What do you think of that, Gardner?
Well, I have to say that the Insurrection Act is inferior to the Constitution. So regardless of what anyone says about the Alien Enemies Act or the Insurrection Act, both of those are inferior to the Constitution. And so, for example, the Whiskey Rebellion is the perfect example.
Well,
George Washington
Gardner, I don't want to get into the Whiskey Rebellion, but what I'm saying is I understand that the Insurrection Act is inferior to the Constitution. What I'm saying is that it buys him time. I'm not saying that it wins. I'm saying it buys him time. Does he declare an insurrection and move? Because in that period of time, which may be days, maybe less, that he would have the ability to bring the National Guard in before he's told he has to get out, he can save people. That would be the reason why he would not wait for an invitation that he knows is never coming from the governor. Do you think it's worth doing that, is my question.
And even though the statute is on the books, I would look at it as being unethical because there is no power given to the executive branch to declare in the Constitution. In the Constitution, there's no power to declare an insurrection on the executive branch side. So regardless of the practicalities of it, I would look at it as, I understand that people have very, very strong feelings about what's going on, but as far as the constitutional oaths of these people are concerned, Yeah. Even Trump, he cannot declare that. It's just not constitutional.
And that, of course, is what the Democrats are screaming, is that's what he's planning on doing. And that's why they're calling him a dictator, and he's overstepping the bounds, and you know, this is too authoritarian. So that's what I think they're hoping for, don't you? They want him to do that because that would, in fact, be the fulfillment of all their dire warnings. And that's why they want him to do it. And that, my guess is one of the reasons why, even though people are dying, Pritzker and Johnson are going, no, you can't come in, because they want the overreach, because it proves them right and it takes them off the hot seat a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I think you make some great points. Absolutely. And it's a shame that all this politics and the racial injections get involved with all of this, because they shouldn't be involved with any of this stuff.
I agree with you. It shouldn't be involved. Thank you so much for the call, Gardner. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to John in Maine. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Maybe I'm veering off the point a little bit, but I'm just astounded, referencing a call earlier where he was talking about the egos of these small town punk politician wannabes like Pritzker and so forth. I completely agree with him. And I'm just astounded that they can't put their egos aside and do what their job calls for and save their cities or whatever they have to do, and, you know, let Trump, constitutional or not. I was trying to follow that argument. I'd like to hear more of the argument of the previous caller about that, because it was very interesting. But I'm reading a book by Montiel Williams. It's called Sailing of the Intrepid, and it talks about the ramp up to World War II and the beginning of the war just after Pearl Harbor. And those boys, I'm telling you, they had egos. They earned their egos right from their, you know, the boats, the bosuns on the boats, and all the way up to the captains. I mean, those people had egos, and they came together in contrast to what these mayors and guys like Pritzker, I call them punks, because I can't stand listening to them. I was raised by a generation of all Navy veterans, and I could just imagine sitting around with them today. They've all passed. My father and his brothers and my other uncles and so forth. I could just imagine sitting with them, listening to the crap that's going on, you know, with these in the cities with these mayors and so forth. So that's all I have to say. I mean, I'm just really astounded. I listen every day, you know, whenever I can, and it's just, you know, we're all casting around for answers, and sometimes I have to go to the church, and my church is my parents' generation, and my uncles and so forth, and that Navy generation, they're all Navy.
I can imagine, John, coming from a family that feels duty as much as apparently, you know, it's obvious your family does, to run up against people who don't feel duty to anybody but themselves has got to be a complete shocker. Because, you know, you come from a military family where honor means something, where belief in something bigger than yourself means something, where putting other people first means something. And that's obviously not the case with the elected officials in Chicago. So I can understand how they look like aliens to you. They look like aliens to me. Because I was raised in a household that had a belief in something bigger than yourself as well. Thank you for the call, John. I appreciate it very much. 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. The text number is 70470. Illinois Governor Pritzker says don't come to President Trump, who has offered National Guard in order to help quell crime, which is rampant and costing people their lives in Chicago. And other cities too, but at the moment he's focused on Chicago. Governor Pritzker says that President Trump's idea of a 30-day occupation of Chicago using the Texas National Guard and other federal resources is committing terror and cruelty against the residents of Chicago. Cut 63, please, Mike.
Let's be clear. The terror and cruelty is the point, not the safety of anyone living here. as lawful citizens exercise their First Amendment rights, Trump and his team will be looking for any excuse to put active duty military on our streets, supposedly to protect ICE. We have reason to believe that the Trump administration has already begun staging the Texas National Guard for deployment in Illinois. I want to be very clear on this point, and I want to speak directly to the press right now. We know before anything has happened here that the Trump plan is to use any excuse to deploy armed military personnel to Chicago.
Is anything that Governor Pritzker said based in reality there? If you saw the National Guard in your city assisting law enforcement, not out there patrolling with guns to take you in hand, but assisting a police officer, would you view that as terror? Would you be terrified? Would you view that as cruel? Because that's what Governor Pritzker says it is. Let's go to Chris in Tewksbury. Chris, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
I'm not doing that bad, ma'am. I do think that if the police cannot do their own damn job, that they were vote or that they were passed the civil service test to do, that they should have the National Guard. Because if they cannot clean up their own work, clean up their own jobs in Chicago and other states, I would not be surprised if they came to Boston.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they came to Boston too. I mean, we're not as bad as Chicago or New York or LA. We're not on the top, 3 or 4 list. But yeah, no crime. It's no non-crime paradise here either. So I understand what you're saying, but I think that what Governor Pritzker said is crazy. I mean, literally certifiable crazy, that seeing seeing National Guard assist armed police is cruel. I personally believe that what's cruel is allowing muggers and rapists and drug dealers to run free in your city. Isn't that cruel? That actually fills me with more fear than seeing National Guard does. And considering that our earlier caller, Joan, who was from Chicago, who was hoping to move back there and who ended up selling her house because of crime, it sounds to me like the crime on the streets fills her with terror too. I don't want to speak for Joan, but I suspect that, she wouldn't find National Guard cruel if she saw them on the street. So I think that the governor does not have both feet planted in the real world. I'm not even sure he has one foot planted in the real world. Thank you for the call, Chris. I appreciate it. Let's go to Lisa in New Hampshire. Lisa, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Hi, Sandy. Nice job you're doing.
Thank you.
So basically what my thoughts are is nobody's talking about the reason why the crime is so high, and that's because of the cashless bill. And we could send anybody we want in there for what? Forever? It's never going to be forever. So, yeah, we can clean it up temporarily, and that's going to be the case in D.C. I mean, the National
Well, they ended the cashless bail in D.C. That ended there.
So that's my point.
Yeah.
So Chicago, Boston, all these big cities have cashless bail.
Yeah.
And what we have to do now is come up with a backdoor plan. We really have to work on getting rid of these crazy George Soros-funded DAs because they're the ones they're the reason. It's not even the mayors. It's the mayors going along with the DAs.
I think it's both. It has to do with both of them. I wouldn't absolve the mayors. The mayors are a big part of what's happening. I mean, I went through that just a while ago. The mayors matter because local law enforcement is controlled by the mayor. The DA may not, may support cashless bail or decide who to prosecute, but you can't even get them to the DA's office if you don't have the police to do it. So I think the mayors are just as responsible. I don't mean to, take the mic away from you, Lisa. I'm just saying that don't poo-poo the mayors. They're a big part of what the problem is. I'm sorry, honey. Go ahead.
I do agree with that. However, they're all in cahoots. And so are the police chiefs. You are not going to have a police chief that goes against the mayor and the district attorney. all these cops have been demoralized because they know if they arrest them, nothing's going to happen. They're going to get out with no bail. They're going to go right back on the streets. So now they're getting cops that really don't even care. And if they do care, they care to a point, but there's nothing they can do about it. So it all trickles down. They're all in cahoots. And if you notice, no prominent Republicans ever go into these cities and campaign. Why? Same with even here. It's always like maybe a moderate Democrat. So my point is until Republicans pack on some you-know-what, and they get into these cities and start running against these corrupted Democrats, it's never going to change.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that George Soros has been responsible along in conjunction, not only just funding the Soros DAs, but also funding the whole anti-blue movement, starting in, about 2018, 2019, when President Trump was still in office, and up through 2020 during the Summer of Love, when you saw the defund movement take off. And those protesters were financed by Soros. You saw that. I mean, you saw them, the trucks going around and dropping off bricks and frozen water bottles for them to throw at people. And this is Sandy Shack filling in for Jeff Kuhner. Democrats are fighting President Trump's efforts to combat crime. And they're trying to do so with sleight of hand now, which is it's ludicrous, and they think that you're going to buy it. There's a kind of a defense attorney maxim, and it's in regard to how you argue, how you defend a case, and it basically sets out a logical progression of denial. And I just wanted to, it's what the Democrats are doing here, and it's kind of reminding me of it, so I wanted to share it with you. You say it's a dog bite case, and you're as a defense attorney, your first response is, you were not bitten. The second response is, you were not bitten by my dog. And the third response is, I don't have a dog. So that's kind of the progression they go through. A doesn't work, B doesn't work, so you go to C. That's kind of what I see them doing. So in this particular case, I see the Democrats in regard to crime, and particularly crime in Chicago, are saying there's no crime. What are you talking about? There's no crime here at all. And then the second level is when you say, yeah, there's crime right here. I mean, 4 people were just, they say, oh, well, we can handle the crime. And so that's what their next story is. We don't need help because we can handle the crime. Now, the third level that I'm just seeing come in now is Trump doesn't really want to help the crime. That's their third level of defense that I see happening. And that started with Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. He says that President Donald Trump's plan to deploy the National Guard in Chicago is nothing to do with crime, that it's politically motivated, and that the real crime is in other states, not in Illinois, and that he really cares about immigration. He doesn't really care about crime. Cut number 65, please, Mike.
Let me tell you, I've learned in politics there's a good reason and a real reason. The good reason stated by the president is reducing crime. We're all for that, aren't we? The real reason is he's got a political agenda. Why does he just pick states with Democratic leadership? If you're looking for the real crime rate across America, you would include states with Republican leadership, reported by the FBI, Louisiana, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, and South Carolina. Haven't heard much about those, have you? The reason, obviously, is Republican governors. The same thing is if you're going to pick a city out, there are cities all across the country with terrible crime rates. If the president wants to deal with those, let him work with local officials in Fairbanks, Alaska, in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, Dyersburg, Tennessee, Jackson, Mississippi. This is an agenda to put troops on the ground for the mass deportation effort which the president is trying to push through. That's the real reason.
Really? That's the real reason? That's what, is he right? Can I point out that the cities that he listed, none of them are on the top 20 list for crime? Who is on the top 20 list? Washington, D.C., Chicago, L.A., Atlanta. These are the top 20 list. And by the way, President Trump, as we just pointed out, has said anybody who asks, and the governor of Louisiana said, yeah, please come. We'd like you to come. We have an issue in New Orleans. And they're going. because they asked for help. They said, take us 2 weeks, we'll help you out. And they're going. Kind of flies in the face of what, Senator Durbin is saying, isn't it? And can't the president want to help criminals? I mean, taking care of criminals and taking care of illegals at the same time? Aren't illegals also criminals? And doesn't this kind of work out to being the same thing? Can they go hand in hand? I think they can. Do you? Let's talk to Michael in Framingham. Michael, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Michael?
I'm well, Sandy. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So what do you think? Can the President Trump take care of immigration and crime at the same time? And is this reminding you of that defendant attorney maxim? Just go A, B, C, just keep going until you hit something that sticks to the wall, because it doesn't matter if any of them are true.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. And first off, nice job filling in for Jeff. You're doing great.
Thank you.
I heard when Pritzker, the clip you played, and he said this is an affront to people of Chicago's First Amendment rights. And I'm thinking, what on earth does that have to do with freedom of speech? But you see, they're just flooding the zone with everything and anything they can, because they're absolutely rudderless. It's got no grounds.
That's a really good catch on your part. That's a very good catch. I was like, you start to pick and choose which ones you're going to focus on, because there's so many, don't you think?
And they, just like the old adage, throw the spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of dumb people out there that will say, oh, man, First Amendment rights, we can't have that. That's sacred to us. But it's got nothing to do with First Amendment.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the First Amendment. But, I think you're right in that is what he's hoping, that you'll be distracted. It's all, sleight of hand, as I mentioned before. They want to distract you from the real issues, which are that your Aunt Mabel was just beaten to a pulp and her purse was stolen when she tried to go to the grocery store. They don't want you to focus on that. They want you to think that somebody's trying to impact you and your ability to talk, your ability to speak your mind. They have a point in that First Amendment is very important to, I think, every breathing, living American. But I just don't see its application here either. So I appreciate the fact that you caught that. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate your call. Yeah, this is what they're doing. They're throwing stuff at you, hoping that you will be so overwhelmed by their diatribe that you won't focus on what's really the issue. And what's really the issue is they have created an atmosphere that has allowed crime not just to breathe, but to thrive. And that's what's happened. And President Trump is coming in to fix it, does two things. One, points the responsibility for the crime at them, which they don't want. And two, he gets credit for his success, which they would rather do anything, including seeing you die, seeing you mugged, seeing you assaulted, seeing you shot, than have him be able to say that he helped and he made things better for you. Let's go to David in Wakefield. David, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
My call.
You're welcome.
So I have a thought, because I think a lot of your callers, a lot of Kuhner country, we all are aligned in belief. We kind of know the information. My thoughts are, if our ideas are correct, but the narrative is constantly being questioned on our end, why don't we ever go on the offense? Like, from a marketing campaign perspective, and Trump, being kind of a showman himself, put out ads on the airways, all over the airways, and flood the zone like the Democrats use MSM to flood the zone. Mm-hmm. But we are always coming back in response. They throw something out there, and then we have to debunk it. I say I've not seen us flood the zone with the actual information, the data from Washington, D.C., to just showcase and be like, here's where we were, here's where we are, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts? Like, are the Democrats just so good at being a marketing machine? They stick it in the front end, and then every other output, is delivered to all the outlets, and they're delivering a unified message, and then that causes us to always be in response mode.
I think that could be part of it, David. I think also there's a lot of deep money on the Democrat side that funds things like that funds the PACs, and that's who puts the ads out. That's not, those ads are put out by campaigns and by PACs. They're not put out by legitimate office holders unless they are in fact running for office and they're a campaign. Then again, that's a campaign situation. That's why you're seeing PAC ads, and there's a lot of deep money, a lot of Soros money in deep PAC ads. I think that's a lot of what you see.
I'm more saying in the fact that conservative radio, conservative media. I don't watch mainstream media. I'm on the internet age. Mm-hmm. But what my point is not so much on kind of the media and the PAC money that's being spent on campaign ads. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that we are talking about J.D. Pritzker.
I got to hold you there, David. If you stay on the line, we'll continue this discussion on the other side. We're up against a hard break. 617-266-6868. Just before the break, we were, we were talking to Dave from Wakefield. Got a frog in my throat. Regarding why the Democrats are better at getting their false messages out. And the GOP is always playing catch up. Sorry we were interrupted there, Dave.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that, if we are truly on the 80 out of the 80-20 side of these issues, it boggles my mind why we're always in a defensive posture on that, right? It's like you're in the 80% majority on a policy idea, but you're having to constantly be in a reactive defensive positioning.
Always being.
So what can be done about that?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that has been done about that is President Trump himself. I mean, I think that's why he took to social media postings and actually created Truth Social, was for that reason, so that he could get his message out. I think part of the problem was that most of the media outlets were anti-Trump and don't want to put out there how people really feel. You see that skewed all the time. How, people are upset about the economy. Well, if you actually ask people, they're really not, because they have a job and prices are going down and they would like it maybe faster, but it's happening. And I mean, I think that's what the press puts out there. I think because they don't want the Make America Great Again movement to succeed, because then it shows them up for being on the wrong side of history before. So I think that was a big problem, is that the message may have been there, but it wasn't getting broadcast because it didn't want to. It just point blank didn't want to. And I think that's why President Trump started to directly tweet to people or to make social media postings to people, because it was his direct conduit. And when Twitter realized how effective that was, and they took him down, what did he do? He created Truth Social so he could keep that conduit moving. And he was right to do so, because I think that was a huge reason why he succeeded, because his message actually got through. Once that started to happen, people liked what they heard and they started following him. I think that's part of the problem. And even though he won the election and a lot of his policies that have been implemented have been successful, that doesn't mean that the press is now his friend. There are some that have come over a little bit and decided that it's better off to be fair and down the middle of the road and try to broadcast both sides of any issue. But there are a lot who still haven't. I mean, you still see MSNBC in such bad shape that they had to rebrand as MS Now, which I think is, basically jumping from, the pan into the fire. I don't think they really helped themselves with that. But I think that's the answer, Dave. What do you think?
We're lucky. First, Trump, in his style and strategy, showed us the way. I think there are a lot of folks on the MAGA and GOP side that just need to pick up that that torch and run with it, right? He's like, here's a pathway of doing this. My second point are thoughts to in response. MSM did this to themselves, because think about that. If they didn't have such bad TDS that they just went up to every opposing position on Trump, they would have still considered themselves neutral to a lot of Americans out there, right? And you know, it's because they caused so many self-inflicted wounds that their credibility was completely shot. That's on them, right?
Absolutely.
That isn't anything that the GOP side or the Republicans did. Trump helped to magnify that. But my thing is, we are in a position here, if we're looking at it, kind of in the art of war, we're in a position here where we should be completely on offense. I don't know what I'm not in marketing or anything like that. So I don't know what the strategy needs to be. And I believe and hope there is one out there, but I feel that we need to be in a offensive position with a huge kind of branding and marketing campaign to set the record straight, right? So we're less in a defensive posture. Then we can stop defending things. We can actually start to have real nuanced dialogue, right, with opposing views on the fringes and edges, right? Because that's where real issues are handled, and it's only handled through conversation and debate and sharing of ideas, which we need to get back to. So that's my thoughts, and that's where this kind of all stemmed it from.
I think you are so right, David. I think you've put your finger on it. I think you're exactly right. We do need to get back to the place where we can actually have a dialogue. The problem is, in order to have a dialogue, you have to have somebody who wants to have that dialogue with you. And has been demonstrated by Pritzker and Johnson and a lot of other people in office holders and people who you would normally think you could have a discussion with to solve something. They don't want to have a dialogue. They want a diatribe.